Welcome to the Project Management Operating Room podcast, where we take a look at real project management problems, diagnose those problems, and offer some solutions. This is episode 1. Today, we are going to look at 3 specific problems. So, the first one centers around templates. There is some confusion around kind of why templates aren't being used, basically. That might seem like a really simple problem, but want to take a look at a couple specific angles of that one. The second one is interesting. So this is a project manager who's been around for 10 plus years. A new CIO comes in and they tell this project manager, hey, we want to keep you out of the tactical stuff. And it creates some challenges. So I want to go through that. And the last one is also really interesting. So situation where project manager got a commitment from a team, basically the SME on the team 6 months ago, and 6 months later said, no, I never committed to that. And now the project is in chaos. So let's take a look. We'll start with case number 1 here. So these were all taken from the project management subreddit on Reddit. I'd love to get to a point where people were sending in problems and we kind of cover those on this program, but definitely not there on episode 1. So first problem. Every time we kick off a project at work, it's like we start from zero. New Google Docs, new structure, new templates, even though we literally did something similar 6 months ago. Same team, same type of work, but for some reason we never reuse anything. We use Jira for tickets, but that's not really where the thinking happens. The actual planning and ideation happens in this weird scattered mess across different tools, and then it's never documented in a way that the next team can actually use it. When I look at how long we spend just setting these things up before we even start working, I wonder if that's just how it is or if anyone has actually solved this somewhere. So, again, it might seem simple, but there's definitely some layers here. So let's take a look. What are the actual problems? So we take a look on the left side, actual symptoms here. So basically, we're starting from scratch on repetitive projects. So we're doing the same kinds of projects, but we're starting over, not reusing anything. The planning documents from the past projects are not available, as we just heard. Jira does not have detailed information. It's just tickets. And then the fourth one, many different tools are used for planning and ideation. So taking a little bit of a deeper look at this, okay, so the root cause here, so the biggest one, looking at starting from scratch on repetitive projects, for me, the thing that jumps out here is that leadership is not mandating or at the minimum fostering a culture where templates are used from project to project, especially on the same type of project. That to me is a leadership failure, whether that's PMO leadership, whether that's more functional leadership, but that's an absolute failure. And I realize from the problem there are a lot of reasons for that, but again, that's just it's really just incredibly inefficient that we're doing the same projects and over, and we aren't, and according to the original problem, can't reuse some of these files. And we'll get into more on that in a minute, but just a really big miss here for me in that area. Next one. So as far as the planning docs from past projects not being available. So again, similarly, leadership is not mandating the use of a shared file repository. So, we should have a file structure, whether that's Google Drive, OneDrive, wherever that might be. That needs to be mandated that, hey, we have this PMO folder. Inside the PMO folder, we have, a folder for finance projects. We have a folder for software update projects. And that all needs to be available to everyone. Everything that gets worked on should be in that folder. There should be nothing kept on a local machine. The next one, Jira does not have detailed information. So this one I can understand. It's a little bit challenging, and certainly it shouldn't be used for a repo unless you're linking it up with Confluence, which is a pretty easy way to actually accomplish what we were talking about in number 2. We'll get more into that a little bit later. But the thing that I'm kind of gathering here is that because the question kind of indicated it wasn't particularly useful, it suggests to me that maybe there's no structure in these tasks. So there's no template being followed. There's no cadence to like updating this with notes like, hey, this is what happened here that got delayed. Those kinds of details are valuable to be able to look back on. So just the lack of defined structure in Jira, and that again also starts with leadership. And then the last one that we talked about, the last symptom, was that there's many different tools used for planning and ideation. So again, this most of these fall with leadership. There's not a streamlined tool set that's being used. So we have people using different tools, and because according to the question, because the tools are different, it's hard for anybody to follow. So how do we resolve this? Obviously, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but first one here is creating a share folder for all the PMs to use with templates for each project type and making that required. That one is pretty evident. The next one is standardizing Jira so that key information is included and the format is standardized. So touched on that a little bit. So every ticket, every task should be the same. It should have the same format. There should be a regular cadence where you're updating those tickets with notes, and so that needs to be a part of the process. And then lastly, gaining consensus around a single tool set that the entire team will use. So if one of the pain points is, hey, we're using different tools and it's scattered and whatever, that's not a good excuse for being so inefficient that we can't reuse previous work. So we need to align, okay, everybody's going to use Google Suite or everybody's going to use Office 365. We're not going to use all these other, OneNote, Evernote, whatever it is. We're not going to use all these other tools. We're all going to use the same thing so that when one person goes to open that file, they can open it. So again, this one, this problem in particular, it might seem, fairly basic, like, oh, just use templates. But there's really some real systemic issues here with the fact that, this organization is working in such a way that we're doing projects over and over and over without reusing anything. So that's unfortunately just a big failure on the leadership side. All right, so let's get into case number two. Case number two. Hey, fellow PMs, I need some advice. I've been a PM for about 15 years, held my PMP for 10. I've worked in consulting, state government, app dev, the gamut of the IT sector. Our new CIO is really throwing me for a loop, and I need help figuring out what the heck is going on. I'm managing two large enterprise initiatives that have a lot of overlap, and I'm tackling them as a program, which was going well until the new CIO started, and now I'm finding myself so micromanaged that I've all but given up on anything other than saying yes to their demands. I've been excluded from activities that until now have been standard parts of my execution methodology. Example, typically when getting the project scheduled together, we first gather requirements. Once requirements are captured, we then sit the technical dev teams down to translate the requirements into the dev plan. We play planning poker or use PERT estimates, but it's always been something I was in the room for. The dev team talked, I'd facilitate or challenge them, and over the course of a few working sessions, we'd leave with a defined plan. I've been barred from that activity. The CIO says the dev team can just hand you a list of tasks with estimates that I translate into a plan. The issue I'm stuck on is there's a lot of missing context. She says she wants me out of tactical and prioritizing strategic, which I'm all for, but I've been excluded from almost all tactical management, which leaves me lacking significant context to be able to work strategically. I know it's all over LinkedIn, this idea that technical work will be replaced with AI and focus is on strategic, but is the expectation that's all we're doing? Am I totally misunderstanding? So a lot there. So let's try to break down what the actual problems are here. So the symptoms. The new CIO believes the PM role should be more strategic and less tactical. That was pretty evident. The next one, the PM feels that the estimates are lacking sufficient context for them to be able to do the schedule. That was a big pain point mentioned as well. The project manager feels micromanaged and has given up saying no. They said, well, I only say yes now. So same thing there. And then the last one is the PM feels that the tactical work is going away with AI. So let's take a look at the root cause of each of those. So the first one, the new CIO believes the PM role should be more strategic. Possible root causes there is the CIO may want the team to be more self-organizing. So may look at this, may have come in and said, okay, well, it looks to me like this project manager is really spending a ton of time with the team, and even in the explanation of the issue, he said, well, I challenge the team, I facilitate the team. So maybe the CIO says, okay, well, I see this, I see what's happening here, and I want the team to take more ownership of this instead of having to be shepherded through everything. So that's potentially very reasonable if that's what's happening. Again, we're having to make a little bit of an assumption, but I think that's a reasonable approach. Um, so number two, the symptom was the PM feels the estimates lack context to schedule. And kind of the root cause here for me is the PM is taking an all or nothing approach, right? So for me, it feels like they're saying that, okay, well, if I can't be in the meetings, that's it. I can't do my job. But there was nothing in there that said he's barred from asking questions. He or she is barred from asking questions. They need to go and ask questions of the team. Say, okay, you gave me an estimate of 2 months for this. Why is it taking 2 months? What are some of the challenges? What is this going to look like technically? Whatever information they need to know, they can absolutely, as far as I know, should absolutely be able to go and ask questions and get clarification on whatever they need to do their workflow. So that's a big one there. Number three, the PM feels micromanaged and has given up, saying no. So for me, kind of the root cause here is, because this project manager feels that they are being micromanaged and maybe not being heard, they kind of have shut down. And that unwillingness to communicate is just simply not productive. Only saying yes, or feeling like you're kind of essentially put yourself into this box of saying, hey, it's going to be this or that. It's not productive. It's not helping the team. So I think the communication there is lacking from what I can tell. The fourth one, the PM feels tactical work is going away with AI. This one to me is worrying about the future doesn't help the team now. So whatever is going to happen. I mean, I haven't seen this happen a lot in practice right now today. So we're talking about something that's going to happen down the road. And that's just not helping the team work through their projects right now. So I just don't see that as being terribly productive. So how can we solve this? How can we help this project manager get through these challenges? The first one for me is communicating professionally with the CIO to understand their desired approach. So, we've kind of, as we've looked through this, we kind of are reading between the lines to say, okay, well, maybe the CIO says, hey, we want something a little bit more traditional, kind of the agile coach, scrum master type of role, and step out of all of the technical and tactical stuff. That's their prerogative, right? So I think for this project manager, getting an understanding of like their reasoning might help to soothe some of this feelings of just feeling very isolated and minimized. And change is hard. I certainly don't want to kind of pile on this person because change is hard. I've been doing the same thing for 15 years. It's very difficult to change. But new leadership comes in and things change at most organizations when that happens. The second solution I would offer here is kind of what I alluded to, which is working with the team to fill in the gaps after the meeting. So, we touched on this already, so I'm not going to get too in depth on it. But questions that you have, you say you don't have sufficient context, go get that context. There's nothing that says that you can't go get the context that you need to do the schedule. And it does sound like, especially when I hear things like schedule and execution methodology, this does sound like a little bit more of a hybrid. There's definitely some things in there that are kind of waterfallish. So maybe part of this, like I was saying in the first one, is maybe there's some conflict of like hybrid versus like an existing hybrid methodology. And now the CIO wants to go to like more classic, agile concepts, Scrum framework, whatever that might look like. So I think that's another one here. The last solution here is shifting the mindset to focus on serving the team instead of worrying about AI or the previous methodology that the project manager was used to. So kind of touch on this. I just don't think this is really productive. So for me, my guiding principle is how can I serve the team? And here I don't know that this worrying about AI is really serving the team. Just like the kind of the shutting down isn't really serving the team. And I get it's hard. It's a hard situation, but you know really need to focus on like what the role is supposed to be, and the role is servant leadership. And I'm just not sure. I'm feeling like that's getting a little bit lost in some of the frustration, understandable frustration this person is explaining. All right, let's jump into case three. All right. So, case three, running what amounts to an IT infrastructure upgrade. Very simple solution. New VMs, new hardware, clustered instance, and a prepared instance. Nothing surprising. But the application sitting in the environment is unknown, and application deployment rollout strategies are not in my wheelhouse. Anyway, engaged in house test lead, discussed the project objectives with application SMEs, and it was agreed the app guys would run and manage testing as they were more knowledgeable and a test has no resources. 6 months later, the test lead is now singing another tune, saying the project dropped the ball. Additionally, the app SMEs who guaranteed they could do the testing and provide the test cases aren't even providing acceptance criteria. When I asked for an example, I was told all dashboards work. I said no, they need to list the dashboard and specify in a measurable way what supposed to have written, or what was supposed to have written, I think they meant there. SMEs seem to be unwilling to accept accountability and want to defer everything to vendors and rely on them for everything from build to deployment to UAT. But that screams of the vendor, quote unquote, checking their own homework to me. Add to this, go live is 9 months away. My portfolio are asking for a detailed go live plan. I'm saying, given hardware hasn't even arrived, it's too early to drill down into details until I know with some level of certainty when it is planned for. They are pushing back. I'm getting the impression there are also politics. I'm historically infrastructure, but have been asked to do this application because it's a mix of both. But I'm getting the distinct impression now there is a background battle between department heads in the different areas, and I'm caught in the middle. It also feels like I might get yanked off the project. The portfolio want me to work full time in it. My line management refused because there's too much to work on. My capacity is forecasted at about 150% for the next 4 months, and 3 of my 10 or so projects are strategic. Any advice on how to best navigate this or not take things personally? Getting burned out now and seriously considering taking leave, but can't afford it because I'm a contractor, so no work equals no pay. And then edited to add, I'm 100% accountable here for the stuff being delivered to date. I'm owning that, but has anyone some practical advice on herding the cats and getting back on track given the lack of ownership of tasks coupled with my failure to follow up on those deliverables? So give credit for stating some of the missteps that were made here. But let's first take a look at the key symptoms. So basically, the project is in a bad spot because the test cases and acceptance criteria were not completed. Second one, the PM is unable to deliver the go live plan because all those test cases and acceptance criteria are incomplete. Third one, the PM feels the SMEs are not accountable. And the last one is the PM feels he is caught in a political game. So let's look at the root cause here, like what's actually going on with these problems. So the first one, test cases and acceptance criteria are incomplete. So this one is just a huge, and I give this person credit for taking, for saying that they are taking accountability, but assuming a verbal agreement from 6 months ago without getting that in writing and without surfacing that to the team is a colossal misstep. There's just no way that can possibly happen. If somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to do this work," it needs to be documented. It needs to be surfaced to the team, and you need to get it in writing. In email or in Jira or wherever you're keeping your work, absolutely has to be ironclad. And in this case, that didn't happen, and that's the biggest root cause of all these problems. The next one, the PM is unable to deliver a go live plan. So, again, root cause here is, well, yeah, of course you can't, because the project is months behind schedule because the test cases and all that work that was supposed to be done with a verbal agreement is not done. So that's pretty natural. I mean, it's just a classic domino effect there. The next one, the PM feels the SMEs are not accountable. Um, you know, and for me, the root cause here is accountability started 6 months ago. So really, the project manager, and I'm not trying to pile on, was not accountable, was not responsible for getting that in writing and making sure that the accountability started with them making that person accountable for what they committed to. So to come back now and say, well, nobody's accountable, that feels a little bit hypocritical, to be honest. Um, the last one, the PM feels he is caught in a political situation here, and for me, when I read through that, it doesn't sound political to me. Of course, it's possible. I don't know all the details, but to me, it just sounds like the project trust has eroded it. It sounds like the project is behind schedule. They're being asked for a go live plan. They can't produce a go live plan. The testing isn't done. The project is deeply behind schedule, and when that happens, um, trust gets lost. And so that's why he mentioned they mentioned in there that, hey, I might get pulled off the project. That, to me, that's why. It's because the trust is not there anymore. So again, these are all the things that are the root cause that kind of has really surfaced here. But how can they solve it now? So let's take a look at that. The first one is accepting responsibility. So, saying that this group is not accountable and that group is not accountable and the vendor can't do that. That's not accepting accountability yourself. Um, that's So first things first is, for me, is to try to regain the team's trust is by saying, hey, this is my fault. And not even saying it in such a way as, I'm sorry, it's my fault for not documenting it. Um, yeah, it's a misunderstanding. Ultimately, it's on me, and move on. But I think that's important to get, a little bit more ingratiated where, you're saying, okay, I own this. Ultimately, it's my mistake and I want to help fix it. And that will, most people will accept that kind of apology, essentially. And then let's get into like actually fixing it. So, this whole thing of, well, the vendor can't do the test cases because they don't, because they'd be checking their own work. Um, Demonstrate competence by leading the efforts to get these test cases in place. This is, there's no reason that, for example, like in the problem, the person stated that, well, all dashboards work isn't a good test case. Okay, well, if it's not a good test case, then get everybody in a room and walk them through how to do a proper test case, and get it done. It's just kind of, to me, this one just feels very obvious, that if you know what the good test cases can look like, and it's not that it's not super difficult to do that. Just in terms of format, obviously you need technical expertise from those SMEs, but there's no reason that you can't get everybody in a room and get this ironed out. And that should have been done months ago. And then lastly, talking about being, over allocated, and maybe that's why, this, the ball got dropped here. But, talk to the manager about being over allocated. This isn't helping the team. It's not helping the company. It's not helping this project manager to be that stretched. Obviously this project is really suffering as a result of it. So, um, you know, it's always something where, we really have to be mindful of, over allocating people, because this is what happens. It's not just worrying about somebody burning out. It's the whole project suffers when this happens. So, anyway, I hope the podcast offered some value. Obviously what we're trying to do is look at practical ways to solve these problems. It's easy to throw out tools, and it's easy to throw out what you might see in the PMBOK or the Scrum guide, but really the reality is that those are just tools that we use when the situation calls for it. For me, I mean, I've been doing this for over 16 years now, and a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've dealt with. These problems. Today I've dealt with some form or fashion of these problems before, or been involved in situations where these kinds of things have happened. So, It's always a learning process, and my goal is to help people learn, and just offer my perspective. I know there's a lot of other perspectives which I value, but hopefully offering this perspective has been valuable to you. Thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.